Jon Snow killing Daenerys Targaryen is one of Game of Thrones' most shocking plot twists, the kind of moment that sparks fervor, debate, and controversy even years later. Game of Thrones ending faced a backlash for many reasons, the pacing of Season 8, Bran becoming king, and so on, but chief among them was its handling of Daenerys. She went from being one of the show's two biggest heroes to its final villain, having to be stopped by her lover and nephew, who had bent the knee to her. Game of Thrones Season 8 would be controversial regardless of that moment, but it was a fatal blow. And yet, Jon obviously didn't act without reason. This wasn't a moment he took lightly, because king or queen slaying is such a great crime in the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. Jon himself, as with most people, had no love or respect for Jaime Lannister for that very reason. Jon was ultimately left with no choice because of Dany's actions, but it took something specific to convince him to act. Jon Snow didn't want to kill Daenerys. He wasn't convinced until the throne room. Throughout the early stages of Game of Thrones series finale, Jon Snow is being pushed to take decisive action. He has witnessed Daenerys destroy King's Landing, and now he's watching in disbelief as the fallout from it shows no signs of remorse. Lannister soldiers are still executed in the streets. Tyrion throws away his hand of the queen pin, and is subsequently thrown in a cell. Arya warns him that Dany is a killer. The queen herself gives a speech that only promises more violence. Jon witnessed all of that, and he still wasn't convinced to kill Daenerys. Indeed, he still wanted to root for her to succeed, for her rule to work. He tried to insist upon staying loyal to her. All through the conversation with Tyrion in the cell, where the imp clearly wants him to murder her, Jon tries not to listen. The evidence against her, of course, is insurmountable, but he desperately doesn't want to see reason. Tyrion tells him that duty is the death of love, but even then, Jon isn't prepared to read Love Its Last Rites. Jon Snow really killed Daenerys because of his sisters. Daenerys posed a major threat to Sansa and Arya. Sansa speaking with Daenerys in Game of Thrones Season 8. Jon Snow kills Daenerys Targaryen because of the many terrible things she has done, and the many terrible things she will do. He kills her because she needs to be stopped, and it's the only way. And, beyond that, because he's the one person who can. But the absolute real reason Jon kills Dany is because of his sisters, Arya and Sansa Stark. Even if they're not his sisters by blood, that's what he sees them as still, and his need to protect them is what comes through in the end. This is something Tyrion had warned him of in the cell, that Daenerys would not accept anyone who does not accept and support her. And Arya and Sansa, very clearly, would not do that. Jon knows the North will not back Daenerys, and that's going to bring consequences when the Queen has just promised to continue the war against all who stand in their way. Dany saying, they don't get to choose, directly connects back to his talk with Tyrion, making him realize what that truly means. Jon may not be Ned Stark's biological son, but he is his truest child in some respects. Like Ned, Jon puts honor above almost everything. What was the one thing that could get Ned to sully his precious honor? Family. It was his sister, making him promise to keep Jon safe, that led to him lying to everyone, including his own wife, for all those years, taking a secret to his grave at the cost of his own reputation. And when Ned was facing death, refusing to take back his treasonous words, what was the one thing Varys was able to say to get through to him? As it was for Ned, it is for Jon. It is the threat to the life of Sansa, and, in Jon's case, Arya too, that prompts him to forget what is honorable, and do what is best for the people he loves the most. It's only when he confronts Dany in the throne room, and fully understands what allowing her to live would mean for his sisters, that he decides to kill her. Jon Snow killing Daenerys had multiple callbacks to Game of Thrones Season 1. It connects to Ned, Jaime Lannister, and Robert Baratheon. Jaime Lannister speaking to Ned Stark in the throne room in Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 3. I'm not going to say that Game of Thrones was always setting up Jon killing Daenerys, or that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss knew that was where George R.R. Martin was headed from day one of the show. Indeed, it remains to be seen if it will happen in the books. But it's interesting to look back at Season 1 now, and see how various lines work with Jon killing Daenerys and add more weight to the moment. Obviously, one of those is the exchange mentioned between Varys and Ned, but there are others, too. From Episode 1, Ned introduces his golden rule: the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. This is important for Jon, and defines who he is in some ways. He carries this with him throughout the rest of his life, such as when executing Yonos Slynt, or hanging the Night's Watch mutineers. These tough decisions test him morally, preparing him to be able to kill Daenerys, and to do it himself.